Hello. Yes. Hello, and welcome to Child Abuse Awareness. First, I want to make sure to read a copyright disclaimer. It's under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. So I want to make sure that I do this so people would know. Now, if I charged money when I showed this information, that would not be right. That would be part of the violation of the infringing of rights. Or if I try to take credit when it's not mine. I want to welcome everyone that is here. And I want to start off. There are a lot of my friends that are in need of prayer. And I had a dear friend of mine whose mother had passed away. She was 91 years old. She lived in Arab, Alabama. She passed away, and she's got three children, six grandchildren, and six great grandchildren. Please also remember to pray for William Pennington. That is her son. He's in the hospital right now. I'm not going to go into his issues, but he needs prayers for comfort and healing. Also, my friend Ron Stockton with Human Trafficking Awareness. Um, he needs prayer as well. And another dear friend of mine, Alan Stinson. He's gone through horrible pain with cancer. So we need to remember and bring these to light and remember to pray for them. Okay. I'll start out by talking about on some Wednesday nights I have a radio show which is called Healing Our Wounds. And I've got a mission statement that basically will fit into everything what we're doing today and throughout our lives. Abuse affects our lives in so many ways. Abuse is torture, crippling, and debilitating. What advice would you give others? Are you there for the person? Or are you part of the problem? Since you may have turned a blind eye. Are you claiming to advocate against abuse but cover up? You condemn the people who tell and share their stories? Do you want to be part of the solution? Are you an officer in the judicial system not doing your job to help the victim? Your duty is to serve and protect. How do we open the public's eyes so they can acknowledge and feel the need to help protect the children and our citizens? Let's stand united and discuss ways we may heal our wounds. I want to welcome everyone that are here. You say a friendly hello. And hello, William. I can see you're there. I hope that you're having a good day, and I hope and pray that you heal. A lot of people they condemn us for sharing our stories. They belittle us. Some people they don't understand why we share our stories of abuse. Some people think we're doing it for praise. We're not doing it to praise ourselves. It's hard enough that we had to live it. But now we share our stories so that we can help others, so that we can show them that there is hope. Show them that they are not alone. I survived because of God's grace and mercy. I got a confession to make recently. I had spoke to a member of a church, and it knocked me for a loop on what I was told. I won't mention what denomination or non-denomination. I will not mention. I will just say that I was told that I am a disgrace to God. People, that knocked me for a loop. Being told that I'm a disgrace to God because I'm sharing my story. That God is all good, he said. But in the Bible, there's all these different stories and examples of all this bad that has happened. And I don't see how they could even equate me and to judge me and say that I'm a disgrace to God. And before the person, after we got off the phone, he wrote me a text and said, miracles don't happen. I want to tell you today that is far from the truth because I would have never survived had it not been for God's grace and mercy. A lot of people that know me today, they don't think that I went through a depression. They don't know about a lot of times it's a constant battle to try to pull yourself back up out of the upheavals. They don't know. They think that I'm just doing grand, you know? They think that, oh, you're surviving. It's an everyday battle. But a lot of times it is easier and it does get better. But we are here to show and be support to one another. We're to show kindness, gentleness, compassion. We are not here to condemn or ostracize. My abuse may be different than your abuse, but still, it's abuse. We do not say that your abuse was worse than mine or my abuse is worse than yours. Abuse is abuse, and it is highly intolerable. Back when I was growing up, I used to think, oh, I gotta be so quiet. Oh, how they pretty much they quiet you where you're not supposed to be talking about it or you're blaming yourself. You want to help the perpetrator cover up the hideous things that's happened to you. You blame yourself. People, it is not our responsibility. Our parents are to love and nurture us, to teach us in the ways of the Lord. They are to admonish us. They are to get on to us when we do something wrong. That does not mean that they got permission to beat us. They do not have permission to treat us and do sexual things to us because that is what is disgraceful to God. The way that our parents have done us, there's been a lot of times when people, members of churches, well, throughout when I was going as a little bitty girl, said, you mind, obey your parents, obey your parents, obey your parents. Yeah, but my mother, of course, I didn't tell the church this or whatever, but when listening to the preacher and hearing, obey your parents, and my mother was telling me I need to get out there and prostitute myself, I don't think God wanted me to get out there and prostitute myself. As a matter of fact, I know He don't. We get so embarrassed about the things that's happened to us. Sometimes we do think that well, nobody loved us. Maybe I did deserve this. But I tell you, I had one sibling that told me that the things that happened to me was God's punishment for me being a bad girl. So that's belittling also, is it not? God's not that way. And to be told that He did this, and even the sexual things that were done to me at age 2 was God's punishment for me being a bad girl. Excuse me, they need to look at the right way. And plus, she's going to get judged harshly because she's a minister as well. And you're supposed to speak the truth. But that's a lie. I've been laughed at for being slow. And yes, who wouldn't be slow? Who wouldn't be afraid to walk across the room or not knowing if somebody's going to come up behind you all of a sudden and hit you in the back of your head and knock you out? Yes, I still have problems today. I've got traumatic brain injuries, and it's a struggle just about all the time. The doctors have asked me, "You got high blood pressure?" No, I don't. They test me a lot of times. They'll come in there in the room. They say, "Well, you're doing better. You ain't got high blood pressure." I go, "Well, it ain't the high blood pressure that's the problem." And every time before I get let out, they say, "Well, you have a different kind of stroke, and it stemmed from the traumatic brain injuries." I'm like, "Yeah, you reckon?" Traumatic brain injuries are no laughing matter. If anybody tells you that you're not worthwhile, you're not loved, you're not cared about, it's all your fault, you're a mistake. Well, don't believe them. That when that person had told me that recently, it put me back to the time when I was hearing all that I was such a bad person. The police did not even protect me, even when I was married. The police not doing nothing to protect me. Matter of fact, the police even said that my husband could hit me all he liked as long as he didn't kill me. And then later on, even though when they came, I had black eyes and I had broken collarbone and some other things, they did not give me any medical attention, so they failed. I got my arms are twisted beyond repair. Um, so one time I went to a doctor and saw the nurse practitioner. Excuse me. And she asked me, I went for a different reason, okay? And she said, "What happened to your arms?" I said, "Well, my arms are fine. I don't have a problem with my arms. I hear about such and such, yada, yada." She goes, "No, your arms are not fine. Your arms have been damaged. Somebody intentionally twisted your arms beyond repair. It can never be fixed." I said, "I'm not here about that." And when she was asking me all that, I was still in the doorway. So when you're going back here to the offices, so all these other patients were hearing this conversation. I turned around and I glanced, and they looked shocked and interested to find out as well what went on, what was going on. And I told them, "It's all right, Here I was sugarcoating, but I didn't really understand how bad I was injured. I can remember going back to my husband and telling him about what the doctor had said, and his normal thing was, "I didn't hurt you that bad." Well, if he didn't hurt me that bad, why would I be injured that bad? Throughout my life, I had to have an emergency tracheotomy when I was 2 because I stopped breathing. I had to have, and I know the real reason why, and I'm not going to go into that detail here, but it involved something sexual being done. Um, always had nasal problems, and I didn't understand why. I couldn't breathe so much. I didn't understand why my daddy was so mad at me for not being able to breathe. And sometimes at night, all he would give me is a whole onion just for me to eat, hoping that would unstop my nose. Back around 2000, my daddy died in 1976. I was 14 years old. So all those years of being reprimanded, being disciplined for not being able to breathe. And I found out the answer why years later. Yes, I had been to other ear, nose, and throat doctors, but they kept saying everything's okay, everything's okay, everything's okay. Then I went to see this one. I guess he was more knowledgeable, more of a specialist. He knew what he was doing. So he asked me, he said, what happened to your nose when you were about 6 years old? And the only thing I could think of was like when I was 7, I fell out of a bunk bed and I landed flat on my nose. Cause, and I got them in my book, the bunk bed fiasco, because that was the earliest memory I had. And so he said, no, this was done intentionally to you. And then so all of a sudden things started replaying in my mind. I guess he jogged the memory loose, so to speak. And I told him, I said, well, keep seeing my daddy coming at me with a pair of pliers. And he said the plier grooves were still embedded in my cartilage. He said your nose was blocked by the pliers since you were 6 years old. You talking about shock, disbelief, upset, because all them years of making it out to be like it was my fault I couldn't breathe, and yet he did it. He had told me that my nose had been blocked like that since I was 6, and it had a lot of tumors on that one side since my nose couldn't drain properly. Then some of them could be cancerous. So imagine hearing that you couldn't have cancer because of that being blocked so long and tumors growing. I felt so alone. Well, I did go home and I prayed about it. I went back and I had the surgery. And by God's grace and mercy, when he started doing the surgery, and afterwards he had told me, he said, I didn't expect that. He said, I thought I would have to scrape out all that, a lot of gunk and all that. He said, I was shocked. He said, the minute I just opened that up on that one side, he said, it just drained. It just all drained out. He did not have to do any type of scrubbing out to get any of the tumors out of my nose whatsoever. And of course, he sent the stuff off to make sure none of it was cancer. And no, no cancer. Praise God. But that was very hard accepting that matter. Like, I knew about a lot of the abuse, but some of the other abuse I didn't know about. Um, and that was one I had found out later. And one thing that really upsets me more, like I had felt like I was to go to a church and show compassion. I seen how people they were talking about suicide one night, and they're talking about suicide being a sin. And this was a Wednesday night class. It was not during the preaching. It was a Wednesday night class. So one of the men there had said, "Well, I don't understand how anybody will want to commit suicide." So I raised my hand, and I just felt like I needed to speak because I understood it all too well. I was there before, you know, and I survived it. I raised my hand, and he called on me. I said, "I understand it all too well." I said, "I have been there. I am no longer suicidal, but I have been there." I said, "When the church went ahead and even told me years before that, well, an elder, but when the elders are representing the church, you might as well say the church." And he said, "It's best let my husband kill me. It's my only way to heaven." When the sheriff had said he could beat me all he liked as long as he didn't kill me. Then later on, he comes and says, "Well, when I call and say that now he's threatening to kill me," then they show up the very next day and tell me that if I wasn't leaving my husband, I better not take my kids with me or they'll get me kidnapped. So I didn't feel protected. I didn't feel loved. I didn't feel cared about. And for another elder, I would go to church and he would call me after church and he would reprimand me. He said, "We allow you to go to church, but you are not to talk to anyone. You can go. We're letting you go. We're letting you go and you come. You know, you come and then you go. But you are not to talk to anybody." And I thought, that's the same as like saying, "I'm not really a member there. I'm not a value. I'm not important." Um, and then with that one elder that was saying earlier that it's best let my husband kill me, it's my only way to heaven. He had said because my family was so bad, so it's best to let him kill me because there's no way that I'll go to heaven because of how my family were. And then to myself, I was asking myself, what does he know? I don't know. Basically, why is he covering for them or whatever and still going to the house and visiting my step my step family and stuff? What's going on? It was, and we didn't have therapy. Uh, we had on insurance. They looked at it as a wasn't necessary. It was something that we would just have to end up paying for because it was looked at almost like when you have facial surgery or whatever. It's just something that you just want, but not necessary. So the elder that was saying he just allows me to go to church and leave, but not to talk to anybody. He actually paid for a therapist, and I would go to his house, and he did sexual things to me. Which, if you go look at my book, it's at Amazon, and it's called Shattered Innocence. And I've got that story written down in there. Of course, I've changed the names in the books. So whoever you're going to see it as this name, that is not their actual name for my safety reasons. And I am proud to say, in God I trust. I will show my shirt. In God we trust. I trust God. I'm giving him the glory. Okay, God we trust now, see it across the screen. But this therapist had said that he had to do things that was not right of a therapist to do. The elder knew about this. He knew that he did these sexual things to me. They knew that he wrestled with me and laid on top of me and refused to get up. And I told him about all this, and I told him about him forcing me to sit in his lap and he had semen on his pants and all this. But the elder was okay with it. He was okay with it. What part of that is that Christianity? Was that? I don't think God would be okay with that. Excuse me. So then I ended up running away from my ex-husband. I ran far away from Alabama and went all the way to New York State, upstate New York. So then I came back for the divorce, and my ex-husband was a certain denomination, non-denomination. His lawyer was at non-denomination. I was kind of thinking that I was at non-denomination. Uh, the judge was that non-denominational, but they didn't want to hear nothing about me. I was such a bad person because I ran off with another guy, yet they were going to let my husband kill me. I guess they just wanted me to wait around and, maybe gone. But it's kind of weird when you grow up and you have the PTSD, you have the nightmares, you have the flashbacks. Um, Sometimes even the loud noises of thunder remind you of a gun going off, or also somebody comes up and bangs on your door real loud, and it's going to unnerve somebody that's got PTSD. Um, they're saying, see, I was ostracized also for saying that God had helped me through all this. So I was told a couple months back that God don't work that way. God don't work the way I said He did. So basically, that's taking away the glory of God. Now that's disgracing God. It's not me. So I'm not going to go into detail about some of the other stuff that was done, but what really knocked me for a loop was being told recently that I was a disgrace to God for sharing my story. People, we need to get out there. We need to tell our stories, give people hope, inspiration. My friend William Pennington, he went and he used to go to Burger King. And there was a lady there who was upset because she had done some wrongs, and so she could only see her kids at a public place with the CPS workers. Well, she was basically giving up on her life. She was giving up. And he told her about my life. And she actually, I went one time and I was visiting William and his mom and his sister and everything. But when I was at William's house, I was there helping clean and organize. I don't want to just be there. I want to help people out when I'm there visiting too. So anyway, uh, all of a sudden this woman got out of a vehicle and she was coming up like coming closer and closer to the door, and I'm like, oh no, I'm gonna get my butt beat, you know. This is his girlfriend or something. I was actually thinking that at first. So it's was getting an alert about the wind advisory, and please pray for the people in Alabama and the different areas because of the wind advisories and possibly tornadoes coming up in Alabama and up to the different areas because of the weather change, fixing to possibly get snow and stuff after having some of the temperatures in the 70s, I believe, but somebody said, don't know where they were. Um, but or close to the 70s anyway. Um, People, what do we do? Do we want to be there and let them dictate us and put us back into a thing where we're supposed to just be silent? That girl, that lady, had got off drugs now. One, you know, and she saw me. She knew who I was because William had evidently showed her a picture of me as well. Probably showed her my book, my first book, which was Born in a Living Hell. You can see it at Amazon too, but even though it's no longer for sale, it's still you can still see it there. And my second book is Shattered Innocence. But anyway, she thanked me for helping her through it. She said knowing my life helped her. She said that she thought she had it rough, and then when she knew my story, she said she didn't think she had it as rough. But I want to tell people that even though you might not think your life is that rough, we cannot compare somebody's abuse being worse than anyone else. Abuse is abuse, and it is highly intolerable. We need to speak up. We need to show hope. We need to show that we survived, that we can persevere. We need to open our arms and our hearts, listen to other people, hear their stories, show compassion, show love, be there for them, and remind them that they matter. You matter as well, and so do they. Well, thank you all for listening, and may God bless each and every one of you. Thank you so much. In the words of some others, bam.